dated Thursday, April 7, 2011. We'll have the invocation by Dr. Mackey, followed by the pledge. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, we come here to deliberate for our parish. We ask that we stay within your life, and we ask your blessing on this meeting. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Mackey. Roll call, please.
Mr. Engelmont?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mrs. Griffin?
Present.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Hassan is out of town this evening, work-related responsibilities. Mr. Landry?
Here.
Dr. Mackey?
Present.
Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Spell?
Here.
Mr. Stelly?
Here.
Mr. Sias?
Present.
Mrs. Trimmy? Here. And President Brain.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Kathy. If you have a cell phone on you tonight, I'd like to ask that you silence it for us, please. And also, if you'd like to speak on any item agenda tonight, if there's blue slips in the back of the room, just fill them out and get them to Jessica. She'll get them up here to us. And just thank everybody for being here tonight. With that said, we'll go to item 5. Presentation of a plaque to Mr. Claude Smart, former parish engineer, director of engineering and public works, and the recognition and appreciation of 32 years of service to the citizens of Calcasieu Parish. Mr. Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure and honor to recognize Claude tonight. I'd like to say a few comments. Claude recently retired after 32 years of service, and we just want to take the opportunity to thank him for that, and I know you all have a few comments as well. Let me go ahead and cover a few things. Claude doesn't like a lot of long-windedness, so I'm going to try to do this real quick, but you can't let a career like that just go by without saying a few things. Let me start off with a little bit of a background. Claude graduated in 1978 from McNeese with a degree in civil engineering. He began his career with the parish shortly thereafter in March of '79. Now, by the way, many of you may remember that McNeese won the first Independence Bowl, 1976, beating the University of Tulsa. It was a big upset. I remember that well. Claude was an offensive lineman on that team. And I'm sure young Kevin Guidry must have been inspired by this as he went on to play ball himself
Most definitely.
at a school down the road on I-10. But I don't know how old Kevin would have been then, but Claude was well on his way at that point. After his great football career at McNeese, he started to work here at the parish, and he started during Rodney Vincent's administration and came on as a professional engineer, worked his way up to parish engineer, and that's how we all know him. Certainly, as long as most of us has been here, Claude has been the parish engineer. He, when you think of Claude, you think of roads. You might think of some other things too, but I'm going to stick with the roads part as far as what is Claude's legacy? The modern road system we enjoy today began in the early 80s in all earnest, with the first sales tax for roads being passed in 1984. We did have some funding before that, but really if you go back before that, it was mostly gravel roads. Think about where we are now with 95% of our roads hard surfaced. Claude's been there from the beginning, and it takes a team, but it takes a leader of that team, and that's what Claude has done. The 1984 tax, along with the 1992 road tax added with it, have been the transformation of the road system in Calcasieu, which I believe is the best parish road system in the state. And Claude can take a lot of credit, most of the credit for that, as well as the leadership of many juries over the years. Claude and Mark also put together the Road and Drainage Trust Fund back in 1994. We kind of don't talk about the history much anymore, but that took a vote of the people to use some of that money, and it's turned $19 million in property taxes into $102 million invested in high-profile infrastructure in the parish and cities throughout Calcasieu Parish. And Claude's been in there every step of the way. He helped form it. He and Mark served on the team along with a representative of the jury every year to grade those, and that is a very historic contribution Claude has made. In 1996, the engineering and public works functions were combined. So not only did Claude run the engineering department, we put public works together because Claude has exceptional organizational skills, managerial skills, and many others. In trying to describe Claude, several thoughts come to mind. He is direct. He is not a person that needs to say a lot to make his point. I think anybody who's dealt with him knows that, and that's a compliment. He also doesn't favor long-windedness, which of course makes people like me a challenge for Claude. Claude is a great thinker, and one thing I admire him so much for is he's willing to say things that others may want to but don't. You will hear what Claude thinks, and that's, again, a compliment. But he is wise, and he has an extremely generous heart. He doesn't talk about himself much, but many of you know this. His mission work through the church over the years is well known. He many years spent weeks in foreign countries helping with mission work, and it's a passion for him. And he really cares about the welfare of others. He always had the workers' interest at heart when he was here. So we've missed him. It's been a great run. He prepared his people well with Tim and Alan. And there are many more things that could be said, but Claude's probably already rolling his eyes that I've spoken too long. So at this time, Claude, if you come up, we want to present you with this plaque. We want to thank you for all your commitment to the jury and your great career with the parish. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And why don't you say a few things?
Y'all too nice. I don't have a speech, but I would like to thank God for bringing me here a long time ago and watching over us and blessing our work through the years, because together we've done a lot of good things. I would like to, thank Rodney Vincent. He hired me and brought me back here. The story's a long one, so I won't get into it, but I actually went to work in Corps of Engineers for a while, and didn't like, they put me in New Orleans. I didn't like it, so I left one day. Ended up here somehow at Winfield, but I'd like to, Rodney hired me, then he had administration stuff to do, and he left me alone, and I didn't probably see him till he retired the next 8 or 9 years, kept walking up and down the hall. But that gave us a chance to get things done. I'd like to thank Mark McMurray, who, he let me go with he put a long leash on me. He gave me a lot of room. And we're going to poor dumb engineer from Winfield and McNeese come and go and start all the electronic technology we did with AutoCAD and the IT department and geographic information systems and our GPS satellite surveying and all the fun we had doing all these electronic things and starting them, and it was just, it was exciting to come to work for a long time, because we could generally we could be at the top of things. We didn't have to be at the back end and waiting for things to be proven. We could test them on our own and see what worked. I'd like to thank the jury, all the juries, and that without their help, I didn't mind doing most of it, but I need some help every now and then. And like Sandy helped me with the 92 tax, going out herself, getting right-of-way signed. And sometimes, you just need a little extra help to finish the deal. And there's one jury I didn't know who helped set it all up in the early 70s. I knew a few of them, but the other ones who had the vision to change from the ward system to the unit system, and where you see a lot of us retiring, came about as a product of their vision, and started a whole new regime. But the old is gone. I also like to thank the staff I worked with. It's hard working with somebody that was obsessive and passionate about their work day in and day out as I am, and I love them all. They put up with me. That's it. No more.
Claude, we have a few jurors that want to say a few things, and I want to start off by saying just thank you for your 30-plus years working here. And I enjoyed the last 6.5 that I've been on here working with you and becoming your friend. You're a great guy, and I think a lot about you. And so I just wanted to let that be known publicly. So thank you for your work and appreciate what you've done. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, Claude, I'm only got to work with you for 3 years, but it's It's always been fun. I've loved going to your meetings because the answers were short, to the point, and that's the way I like it. So for everything you've done for the parish.
Thank you.
Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Claude. You know, I've been on this jury for 12 years now, and the first year I was here, I got into an argument with Claude. And boy, was I taught a great lesson. For the first 2 years, I didn't get anything done in my district. And I'm like,
I love it.
I got to heal this up. This man has a lot of power. So he taught me as a young juror early on that you catch more flies with sugar. So I started learning to be really nice to Claude, and it helped. It helped a lot through there. Of course, one of the things, you've surrounded yourself with good people. Tim and Alan's going to be able to step right in, and thank you for doing that. And also, one of the things a lot of people may not know, it's tough to win a golf tournament when Claude's in it. He's one of the best golfers in the parish. It's been a lot of fun to play with him. Of course, I like to kind of antagonize him when I was playing golf with him. I'd move my foot or something like that, and he's like, "I see your foot, Hal." So, he's a great guy and a great sport, and going to be missed by the entire parish. Thank you for what you've done, Claude. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. Mr. Spell.
Claude, one engineer to another, I just want to say you're a wizard at what you've done. Most time engineers are dealing with, one or two clients. Claude has balanced the needs of 15 clients, and in the short time that I've had the opportunity to work with him, I think he's done an excellent job balancing the needs of 15 clients. And I've gained a tremendous amount of respect for you, and I will miss you greatly. Thank you for your service.
Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank you, Claude.
Made it on time.
I did, and the reason I got here on time today because I knew you were going to be here. But I thank you for everything. I learned a lot from you. And one thing about you is, even if you didn't want to do it, if I went to you and it was the right thing to do, you would always help me out and try to find a way to make it happen. I do want to make one correction, though, to your speech. You said that poor dumb guy from Winfield. Now, I know we got something in common because my mama was born in Sykes, which nobody's heard of that, but Claude has. Because I found out he was from Winfield. It's right outside of Winfield. And so I'm sure she would correct you. Smart people come from Winfield and Sykes.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Mr. Guidry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Claude, I guess Brian pretty much summed it up. I mean, wow, you're a great guy. I mean, just a little bit about when I first came on. There was a lot of things. Being a young juror, you want to get a lot of things done because you want to kind of set a precedence for things in your district and everything. And I think I went to Claude one day. I went to his office. I said, "Well, Claude, I've got this great idea. I want to see if we can get this done." He said, "Nope, can't do it." I said, "Well, can I tell it to you first?" He said, "No, can't do it." I said, he said, "It's not election year." He said, "Can't do it." So the thing that I think that sets Claude apart, and boy, we're going to miss you, is the fact that you have a passion for what you do. And you've taught us so much as young jurors how to sometimes be patient and good things will come to you. And as a result of that, you've helped me a great deal to do the things that I've done in my district for my constituents. So here tonight, I just want to say, one football player to another, thank you so much.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. Mr. Trimmy.
I'll be short, Claude. I know how it is. I know how you feel. But you know that we've been, since 1992, when I had the honor of being elected on the police jury, Claude, along with Jenna Beth and many, many others, Mark and Colleen and Kathy and so many others, were mentors. And even the man, Mr. St. Mary, next to me that sat with me at that time, because this S&T here, got S&T now, that was S&T then, kept asking me, "How do you get everything done that you're doing?" Well, I don't tell my secrets. You just move on and keep on getting things done, And one of the things that I think was a milestone, and you mentioned it, there are two things. One is the Road and Drainage Trust Fund, because I can remember coming up here with Buddy Hennigan and Ray Hyatt, and they had 27 pounds of paperwork that they carried up here to ask the parish to help them with the Buxton Creek, because DeQuincy flooded. I mean, we were underwater completely. And they had finally got, through DOTD, the $2 or $3 million loan, but it all had to be matched with other funds. And there was no way for the parish to match it. There was no vehicle to get there to match it. And that's when Mark and Claude got their heads together and figured out the Road and Drainage Trust Fund. And of course, it's helped many of millions of dollars. But what I wanted to say is that the Buxton Creek was one of the first that got it, and it's made a difference. We haven't flooded since. So that's a milestone. The other thing that I did want to say is Claude always told me that you're one of my best right-of-way people. So I was honored to go to people's house and talk to them about the right-of-way. A lot of times they didn't understand if they signed the right-of-way deal, they wanted the check right then. They didn't understand it had to come through the police jury before and be mailed to them as soon as it passes. So, you know, there's just a lot of information that maybe is hard to get over to some folks. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all our heart-to-hearts and down to earth, and you set me straight talks, and I miss those. I miss you. God bless you and your family and your children. And that's all I have to say. But we miss you. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. Dr. Mackey.
Well, I want to thank Claude for all the short meetings we had on the roads. We got in there and we started talking and said, we can't do it or we can do it, and that was that, and we went on to the next issue, and I think that was a very valuable thing. I had a person, actually I had no roads. I'm in the city, so I had no roads. But I had a guy that was bugging me and bugging me and bugging me about roads, mainly in the country club area. And finally, I was explaining to him that it was a lot of issue. And finally, I went to Claude and asked him if he'd just give me a transcript of 40 feet, just 40 feet. I got a packet about that big, and the next time I went to the racket club, I threw it at him and said, that gets you 40 feet. If you read it, he'll probably do it for you. Never heard another thing from him. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Collins.
Sir, thank the Lord for your service to Calcasieu Parish, and I also want to thank Mrs. Smart for letting us have you to service in Calcasieu Parish. And I just want to wish you that many retirement on a good retirement on your retirement, and may God bless you.
Thank you.
Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think when I first got on the jury, when I would walk in the building, and Claude, he would go the opposite way. When I first got up here, I didn't understand the process, and it didn't take me long to find out, but I most certainly appreciate the fact that I took the time to get to know him, and it was a blessing for me because I found out that his personality was similar to mine. A man of very few words, and whatever he tells you, that's what he means. Nevertheless, every Thursday I would ask him the same question, and he would give me the same answer. How are you taking care of my people in Westlake? And he would always say, you're covered. It's all right. And then one day I asked him to give me a printout on all of the roads and everything we had done, and I had a list of it. I appreciate you. You most certainly made my job easy for me, and I thank you. Godspeed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The one thing that I learned from Claude was when you were in a meeting with him, you better pay close attention, because when he'd go to mumbling, you didn't know exactly what he was doing. But you taught me a lot, whether you know it or not. I don't know if you. I'm trying to give you credit. You don't look like you want to take it or anything. But anyway, you've been a friend to me. You've been an icon here. You've trained your understudies very well, and it's a tribute to you. And we wish you the best from this day forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Claude. We appreciate it.
Oh,
You couldn't get a right away.
You need to be
Okay.
Go take a picture with him.
Get closer, get closer.
He's enjoying it. He can't.
A good guy. He used to fuss. He used to fuss.
Not gonna be the next Charlie Adams.
Love it.
He is so precious. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Oh, that's what he was going to be? I love it. Go get him, Charlie.
Yeah, I'll try. Okay, with the jury's permission, I'd like to pull item 19 and go to it next.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let me find it. Item 19, consideration of adopting a resolution approving issuance by the Louisiana Local Government Environmental Facilities and Community Development Authority not to exceed $7,750,000 hotel motel tax revenue bonds to the West Calcasieu Parish Community Center Authority for development of an events and community center.
Move to
by the
adopt.
authority.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Farnham. A second by Ms. Trimming. Go ahead, Mr. Delafield.
Guys, this has been under development by the district for more than 10 years. It's a second phase of a two-phase project. They did the outdoor community center, event center first. Now they're doing the community center second. If you have any questions, I've got the architect and board members here. But it's very straightforward. This has been under development for 10 years.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, Jay, thank you very much.
Thank you all for taking us out of order.
Appreciate it. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, from there, we'll go to item 7, and then at 6 o'clock, we'll hold a 6 o'clock action. Item 7, take appropriate action on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Vickers.
Mr. President, we have one application. It's a special events permit. We recommend it.
Move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 8,
Move on to 8.
approval of payment of all current invoices. I have a motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 9, consideration of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated March 3rd, 2011. Have a motion by Mr. Sias, and a second by Mr. Collins. Item number 9. Do I have any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 10, consideration of
So moved.
the
Second.
Regulatory Committee
Oh,
report
bullets.
dated March 31st, 2011. Mr. Collins.
10-1, receive report from staff regarding the status of the miscellaneous ambulance service operation as follows. Item 1, the original patient transport rates were set in 2003 when the franchise agreement with Acadia Ambulance became effective, with one rate increase having been approved by the police jury in 2006, other than the cost of living increase based on CPI as provided in the agreement. And 2, the response zone map was currently being studied to determine if any changes were needed based on the 2010 census figures, and if so, the revised map would be submitted to the Quality Assurance Review Panel and then to the Ambulance Regulatory Committee for a recommendation to the full jury. 10-2, Mr. Jerry Romero served as Vice President of Operation. Acadia Ambulance appears before the committee with reference to the ambulance service costs and a request for a rate adjustment for ambulance service due to increases in operation costs, which has not paralleled with the cost of living increase in a reduction in Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement, 71% of Acadia transport in Calcasieu being Medicaid and Medicare patient, unpredictable fuel costs, and unknown effective of Federal Patient Affordable Care Act on the healthcare industrial. Mr. Romero stated that the increases as presented were in line with customary rates and would bring Calcasieu in line with statewide rates.
I know.
The committee recommended approval of the increases as follows. Emergency base rate from $631.04 to $835. The non-emergency base rate from $349.41 to $565, and the mileage from $15.65 per mile to $19.50 per mile. I'll make a motion to approve this rate, Mr.
Second.
President.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Thank you, Mr. Collins, for that report. Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, now we're going to go to item 6, which is a public hearing to receive public comment and input on a proposed plan for the redistricting of the police jury single-member districts following the 2010 census. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak on this item?
Yes, we do. We have one.
Okay, I have Mr. Paul Swain. Just come to the microphone, Mr. Swain, and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Paul Swain. I live at 853 Woodland Hills Drive in Moss Bluff. I've kind of been debating this in my mind for the last, I don't know, month or so, I guess, since the first time Mr. Spell came and visited us one night at the district and gave us some numbers to look at, some things to think about. And I kind of see numbers from a different way than the average person, so if it seems kind of strange at first, please forgive me. I think I'll be able to make my point for you. I took the numbers you guys gave us in this little packet and the total parish population, divide that by the number of districts, and you come up with that 12,851 people per district. And I kind of got to thinking about what that number would represent. Well, that number represents to me the constituents to jurors ratio. And so I got to looking at the map and how it's going to lay out and how many jurors each section or ward is going to have. And I noticed that Moss Bluff was going to be a little watered down with 4 jurors. And I know some other districts are going to have, 2 jurors in that community. And but if you look at those numbers in that light, if you just drop Ward 1 out completely, act like our district doesn't exist, and you take the remaining 14 districts, you come up with a constituent to juror ratio of about 12,390 folks. Mr. Spell has taught me a lot of things in the last 18 months, and the most important one, I think, is for every one phone call that man gets to do something, he gets another phone call asking him, please don't do that. Mama Cush Cush calls and please cut the brush in the lateral in my yard, and the neighbor across the way says, please don't, that's my privacy fence. Well, knowing how y'all's job works and how difficult it is, and I can empathize with you, when I look at that constituent to juror ratio for Ward 1, when you work that math out, that brings us to about 4,800 folks to juror, which sounds great if you're a kid in a classroom, but when you're talking about votes, the rest of the ward has an average of 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 more of a voice than I do. Just because I'll use Miss Sandy as an example. I've dealt with her on a few things before, water projects and stuff I've built. She's just as honest as the day is long, and if I know something about Miss Trimmy, she's going to do her job. And her job is to represent the folks that voted for her and put her where she is and to do what she's supposed to do. And she's going to do that. I've never not seen her do it. Well, for every one phone call she gets from Ward 1 to do something, at a 3 to 1 ratio, she's going to be getting 3 to not do it. Miss Sandy, why would you do that in Ward 1 when we need that over here in District 11? Why would you do that? It don't make sense. And then you throw in that extra swing vote from Ward 1 itself, because we're kind of famous for shooting ourselves in the foot sometime. That one person will stand up and say, hey, look, I know this guy asked you to do that. I don't want you to do it. So that turns into a 4 to 1 kind of thing. And I really wish I could get you guys to reconsider the way you're looking at this redistricting when it refers to Ward 1. Having 20,000 people with 4 jurors and only 1 real solid vote, that just doesn't sit well with me in my spirit. You know, you have to do what the folks who vote for you ask you to do. And if 75% of the people who put you where you are live outside of my community, I'm outnumbered. If you were to look at these numbers I just gave you as a church choir, which church choir is going to put out the most sound? The one with 12,000 folks or the one with 4? It's just basic and simple math. And I would ask y'all, before you etch this thing in stone, that you may want to consider some of this, because we've got a perfect storm coming in Ward 1. About 8 years or so from now, we're going to lose the biggest bulk of the sales tax revenue that we have. And if I'm going to need anything in Ward 1 when that day comes, it's going to be a vote. It's going to be a help for Mr. Spell or whoever's filling his shoes at the time. Because when that revenue is gone, it's gone. And our tax structure is already kind of weird, and we're not sending the money to Allen that he needs to do his job with already. And when we lose that big bulk of revenue, if something else doesn't come in to take its place, that's a perfect storm. I'm going to be the first redneck with no shame coming up here asking for money that I really don't deserve. I'm not going to care that I have lost an income revenue source. I'm not going to care that I'm paying too much for my schools. None of that's going to matter. I'm going to be here looking for a vote. And at 3-1, I'm already going to be outnumbered. And it's just for those reasons I would really like you guys to reconsider the representation of this and how it's going to play out. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you for your comments. I
Yes,
have a
sir.
juror that wants to ask you a question. Mr. Landry?
Sure.
I was going to ask a question. I was just going to make a comment and tell, I mean, I appreciate your comments and I understand what you're saying, but whenever we all got sworn into office, I mean, we got sworn in to represent the people of Calcasieu Parish, not just the people of our district. And I don't always vote the way that I'm asked to vote by the people of my district. I hope that they put me here to do what I think is right. Sometimes they're going to agree with that and sometimes they're not. If it's an issue in Moss Bluff, I'm going to vote the way that I think is right and not the way that one of these people may have asked me or someone else asked me to vote. So, I understand what you're saying, but at some point you got to have faith in the system, and you hope that the right thing is done. And I think that most of the time it is done, that the right thing is done. But I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Swain, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, at this time, we have concluded the public comment period on the proposed redistricting plan, and we'll call on Mr. Beam regarding action needing for this item. Mr. Beam.
Before I get into the formal items, and in a moment, Jessica, matter of fact, Jessica, if you would go ahead and hand out a folder to each juror. If there's any questions at this point, or if you would like Mr. Cole to address any of the concerns, we certainly can do that now and then go over the formal action that you need to do as a jury tonight.
Okay, Mr. Beam, we do have Mr. Spell would like to address Mr. Cole on it. So if you'd come up. Thank you, Cade. Go ahead, Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Cole, based on the input that we just received, I understand, as well as the other 14 of my colleagues, that redistricting is a very complicated process. And you made it clear several weeks ago that we did have discussions on a second district in Ward 1. Could you go over the complexities or some of the complexities that were involved with doing that? And then after you do that, I just have a few more comments and then I'll yield.
Mr. Spell, I will say for the benefit of your district, Mr. Spell pushed very hard for a second juror dominated by Ward 1, and we looked at it seriously. The numbers are just not there. Ward 1 has a population of 19,488. a jury district being ideal at 12,851, 2 districts would require 25,702 people. So obviously you can't make 2 entire districts. So then the question becomes, where do you go? In redistricting, although it is math, it is by no means simple math. The principal fact is the Voting Rights Act requires us to use all of our minority precincts to make our minority districts effective. In some ways, the minority population of the parish is slightly below the number of majority-minority seats on the jury. So we absolutely need all of the Lake Charles African-American majority precincts to comply with the Voting Rights Act. Because of that, a Ward 1 dominated district may not go into Ward 3. And so therefore, to look at where would it go, you have to look at the adjoining precincts that would be contiguous. And in doing that, you find that if you go all in one direction, you don't have a Ward 1 district at all. You have a district that is adjacent to Ward 1 that includes a little bit of Ward 1. So to make 2 mostly Ward 1 districts, you have to go in many different directions. You would have to go, and because of the populations of the adjacent precincts, you would have to go, and I think I showed you this, to the city limits of DeQuincy, to the city limits of Westlake, and to the city limits of Iowa. And obviously that is both, I don't believe in the interests of the people of the parish, nor would I think it have been politically tenable to invade all these other districts to create that second district. So the math was just not there. It did not work, and I know that we've talked, if the growth continues to occur within the Moss Bluff community, 10 years down the road, there could be a different set of circumstances. I think 10 years down the road, it's possible that on this trajectory of growth, the population there will justify 2 districts. But at this point, the numbers are just not there for that, and there is no feasible way to do it because the Voting Rights Act precludes going into war.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Mr. President, if I may follow up.
Yes.
And I also appreciate Mr. Swain's comments. I do believe Mr. Swain's comments probably represent a majority of people in Ward 1. But with that said, I would like to follow up on Mr. Landry's comments. I was elected to serve the people of Ward 1, and but I was also elected, as Mr. Landry stated, to do what was right. And with the plan that we have to submit to the Justice Department, the plan that we have is a good plan. It is not controversial, and it stands a great chance of approval, which will save taxpayers and the people of this parish a great bit of time and money in the future of any reconsideration of optional plans. So although I understand that there will probably be people that disagree with my decision, and people that will be disappointed with my decision, I do support this plan because I feel it's in the best interest of this parish. So I appreciate Mr. Swain's comments. I appreciate all the hard work that the staff put on this plan, and I just ask that the constituency I represent understand that the decision I made was made for the best interest of the parish as a whole. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Mr. Bean.
Thank you, Mr. Brame. I would simply take a moment to go through your packet that Jessica handed out, and then you can take action on an ordinance. But the first item is really the main item. The redistricting ordinance is what you need to pass in order to formally approve the plan. It is through an ordinance, and it is then sent to the state agencies that require this, as well as Department of Justice. The ordinance includes standard language that has to be in there for redistricting in any jurisdiction, and it also includes the precinct splits and the specifics, property descriptions of each of those, and you will see that as a part of the body of the ordinance. And just as a reminder, there were 3 of those in this plan. Attached to the ordinance is the actual plan broken down into districts as well as precincts, and so it's in table form, and it shows each district's population, African American percentage, and deviation percentage from ideal. And as as we've covered before, each of these, of course, fits all the criteria that are required in government at the federal level and state. Behind that document is the map, which is the same information but in illustrated in the form of a map, so that we, if anybody wants to refer to the district lines, and obviously the document that goes in the packets is going to be the larger maps folded. It will be much larger than this, but we want to make sure that we represented which plan was actually being approved, which is, there have been no changes, just to confirm, since the plan that was presented on March the 24th. The last document in your packet isn't really part of the formal ordinance, but it's good information to have. It is the complete population statistics, including voter age population and registered voters for these districts. So it's good detail. The Department of Justice looks at things such as this, and we want to make sure each of you have that. So if there are no other questions at this time, the action that you will need to take is the formal adoption of an ordinance, the redistricting ordinance as presented and as commented on during the public comment period, which ended tonight. So at this point, it would be appropriate to
Make
have
a motion on
to
that.
approve the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan, and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that will pass. Thank you, Mr. Bean.
Congratulations.
Yeah. That was quite a task. Okay, we are on item 11. Consideration of approving the solid waste and litter abatement
Move on 11
committee
all but-
reported dated
Second.
March 31st, 2011. I have a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Ms. Griffin. Ms. Trimmy.
Oh, thank you. The committee met on March the 31st, 2011, and the approval of, this is some of the staff's recommendations that were made on March the 17th, and then recommendations that were, additional ones that were done on March 31st. They did the scope of the work, which was the single contractor for unincorporated areas of Ward 2 through 8. Ward 1 inclusion in base rate proposals with provisions from the CPI, fuel index, and surcharge adjustments for billing. Level of service, no change in the level of current service as defined by the current contract. Existing residents will have the same number of existing containers at no cost to the residents, and the cost of new or additional containers are to be borne by the residents. New residential services, there is no direct cost to the resident for the first container. Cost of conditional containers are to be borne by the resident. Provision of community services, the contract terms, 5 years with 5 years renewal. Provisions for annual CPI rate adjustments, monthly fuel index adjustments, and liquidated damages. The method of the collection is semi-automatic residential rear loaders unless otherwise authorized in subsequent contract negotiations. All excess waste to be collected on normal route without subsequent pass where possible. Evaluate the criteria point system is to cover the background experience, ability to perform the equipment that they have, the community service, and the cost of services. And the composition of the review panel was changed to 7. There will be 7 parish staff members from the Administration, Public Works, Planning, and Housing that will be reviewing the proposals on a point basis. And the committee recommends that the appropriate action on the RFP, including all approved recommendations and the calendar, as well as the revisions to the Solid Waste Management Manual, be taken by the full jury today, April the 1st, 2011. And so I move on the committee report, approving the committee report only right now.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Trimmy. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion?
Second.
Any objection? Hearing none. Go ahead, Ms. Trimmer. Okay, motion carries. item 11.
Did you need to say something?
To receive report, I'm sorry.
After y'all pass the motion.
Yeah, motion's passed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the last meeting, we did not call another solid waste committee meeting, but some of the jurors communicated with me, and Sandy and I spoke. The issue of cans seems to be sort of muddy, I guess is a word for it. We felt like we revisited the recommendations, and everything that Sandy reported in the committee that's on your agenda we believe is good and should stay, but we do have some, just a few recommended revisions since the committee presentation last week on the 31st, which at this time, well, we went ahead and did it in slide form. And again, everything else that's not I cover that I don't cover tonight would stay the same as the recommendation. So let me state first, I forgot to mention Alan Wainwright is ill today, and so he's recovering. I'll summarize what these are, and we have several staff that have been working on this, and of course, if you have any questions or comments, we'll go from there. Tom, you can go to the next slide. This is just a calendar to show where we are in the process, and we're on schedule. We believe tonight, if you agree to it, we actually could incorporate these changes, and you could approve it tonight, and we can go forward. But this is where we are on April 7th in the process. You can go to the next slide, Tom. The area of the proposed RFP recommendations is all under what's called level of service. If you want to refer to your agenda, you can see there's a lot of underlined phrases. So that's the only section that's affected with the suggested changes. One of the things that's been tough, because Calcasieu has a contract and I should say a system that's really not like any others. And I think we've said that before, but the situation where you have one can that's provided as part of a contract, but the residents buy the second can, and who owns it and who doesn't, it gets kind of confusing. One of the things we had recommended in the first set of proposals was, let's do everything uniform. Let's go ahead and purchase one-to-one, is what we call it, exchange for all cans, so that everything's uniform. But the more we continued to mull over this, there's a lot of money that would be spent for really no reason. Our amended proposal on that is simply to do a one-to-one exchange for what we call first cans only, instead of every can. And I'll say this, I think Mr. Landry brought this up a meeting or two ago. We would not have to get used to different color cans, but that may be worth $500,000 or more just to replace them. We really can't justify that. If under this proposal, anybody who had a second can or a third can, it would just stay there. If the current provider kept it, there's no change. If a new provider comes in, our recommendation is just to have them put a sticker on it. And as these are replaced over time, we would have a generic can. It's the same size and so forth, but it wouldn't be an issue about whose can it is and what name is on it. And we feel like sometimes simple is better, so we made that change. However, the first can would still be a part of the service, so that's one change. I basically covered bullet 2 already. The second cans, we call them, or third if people have them. They just stay there at the household and would still get picked up. Under this plan, just to make sure that everything is easily apples to apples, we can very simply separate out, and this was some of the issue that some of the jurors brought up. When the proposals come in, the line item for monthly service would be separated out from the cost of the first can. Obviously, you need a can to have service, but this will make it easy to compare any proposals that come in. We strongly believe you do not need to mandate new cans. That would be money spent unnecessarily. The current provider obviously wouldn't have to do it, but neither would any proposers have to do it. Many companies have cans in warehouses. If they have that, that's perfectly fine. We don't see a problem with that. Honestly, the current provider's been replacing with new cans for many years. Cans get old pretty quick. It's just, we felt it's not necessary. Everything we've proposed is to try to save money on the plan without sacrificing service. So that would be the change there, is separating out the cost. I'll ask Tom to go to the second to last slide. What we did here, this isn't the actual form, but we kind of need to give you something a little visual to know what we're talking about as to how this would look. And then we'll spend a brief time on Ward 1 just because it's separate. So under this set of recommendations, our recommendations as amended tonight, our proposal is that it would show the first item at the top. You see it says basic service per household. So they would turn in their proposed amount. That would be with no cans. That's service. They would then show on the second blank, and we'll name it more formally, but just for tonight's purposes, we'll call it, what is it going to cost for the first can? Now keep in mind, that's about 25,000 households. So roughly 25,000 cans. We wanted to put that separate for the, apples to apples issue y'all have discussed. That takes care of the item that's come up since last week. And it also gets us a better price probably because of the bulk. It's a lot of cans. We can get a better rate. The third item is needed as a replacement cost or additional cans. This is the 1s and 2s over the years when somebody says, I'd like a second can, or it has to be replaced. We need a cost for that, and it may be different because it's not in bulk, so we put that separately as well. That's really the only changes, and we certainly can discuss the item, but while we're at it, we thought we'd go ahead and explain Ward 1 to make sure everybody's clear. Although it is separate, we feel like as a parish, you can give them the benefit of what we have in terms of any cost savings from having all the rest of the parish in. It's a better rate. So, and again, this was actually presented as part of the recommendations, but this would clarify just to make sure we understand. We would have people turn in what their basic service rate would be in Ward 1. They would have to commit to that, or no more than that. They could go less in item 1, and the same with the first can. So if you lived in Ward 1 and you chose, if the provider changed, and you chose that provider would have to agree to charge no more than what we're getting at the rest of the parish. So they are Calcasieu citizens, even though it's separate. They still pay separate on their own. This has been in place for many years. Up until the last couple of years, it's really always been this way. So that really is a good thing for the citizens. The customer would have an option on the can because they would have to purchase a can if it's a new provider. They could be billed in a lump sum on the first bill, or they could spread it out over 12 months. We felt like that was fair and would be no problem for any provider. And then again, replacement cans would be at the same rate as item 3. So the short way of saying that is that Moss Bluff and Ward 1 residents would benefit from our buying power. That's really what this is all about. They still pay separately. They already do. That would continue. But it would give them the benefit. The last thing I wanted to cover before any questions or comments, the last slide is next steps. Once the RFP is approved, if it's tonight, for example, we finalize everything, we send the document out, we advertise it. We know the companies that have already expressed an interest, so we'd make sure they all get it, of course. This is a complex enough thing to where it's really worthwhile, once those ads have run, to bring in any interested parties and have a pre-proposal conference. It's usually called a pre-bid conference in construction projects. You sit down face to face and clarify the intent of a lot of this detail. So we feel like that'll go a long way. And after that, we go through the rest of the process on the calendar. So that's it. And if you have any questions, we will do our best to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. If I could get a motion to go ahead and
So moved.
approve the RFP recommended by staff, and then we'll open it up for discussion. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Dr. Mackey. Okay, discussion, Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, on the can, Mr. Beam, on the can, what you're saying is a like new can. If it's a different
Yes,
provider.
I'm sorry, it would have to be approved by the parish. It can't be just any
It'd
old
be a
ratty
refurbished.
can.
It could be a refurbished.
Absolutely.
In,
It
in
just
good
doesn't have to
working
be-
order, new, nice wheels, the axle, the
Yes.
handle, the lid closes properly, it's not torn, that type of can.
Correct.
Rebuilt, I guess we could say.
Yes.
So that's all right. It doesn't have to be
okay.
brand new. Because, I mean, after they use it the first week, it's going to be dirty. I mean, it's going to be a trash can.
That's right.
One other, or two other issues. If the current provider wins the contract again, some of these cans, of course, are 18 years old. Now, I know they have, and I'm assuming that they have, as people have called and, hey, my can has a problem, those cans have been repaired. I don't know that for sure. I haven't personally gotten any complaints about a trash can not being in good repair, but there have been comments made that there are a lot of cans out there that are in disrepair. Now, it's possible that the current provider doesn't even know that. I mean, they can't fix it unless they know about it. Is there any way that if they do get the contract again, that they could send out a mailer that maybe would even come back to the parish that would ask them, hey, is your can in proper working order or not, and something that they could just drop back in the mail to let them know? Because I don't know. I'm thinking that some people don't even know who to call, and they just keep putting up with that every week, that the wheel's falling off, and they keep putting it back on there.
Yeah, let me address that. The answer is yes. We plan to do a few things regardless of who gets the contract. One is a house count. We have a pretty good idea, but we need to get that firmer and then keep up. As long as we do that and keep up with it regularly, we'll be fine. That also gives us a chance to determine, how many of these cans are out there that maybe need to be replaced. So that's where we envision taking care of that, even with the current provider. If it's a new provider, same thing. It's a bit of a task, but that's part of the deal if you switch out. So yes, we would need to do that. As far as a mailer, we will look at different options, but yes, anybody who feels like they need a new can, that should be an option when it's just not repairable. But I would like to clarify that, because this is where there's no way around it. It just gets confusing because we have different types of cans in terms of who pays. The way the contract is currently written, and we wouldn't change this, that first can that everybody would get, if they can repair it and refurbish it, they do. At some point, though, and they've done this, Waste Management has replaced many cans. They have to put a new one or exchange it for another can. It doesn't have to be new. So that's already there. That would stay there. It also includes in the contract, and I forgot to add this, but we recommend it in the new one, that it's mandated that whoever gets this would be responsible to repair the second can and third can if people have it. 9 times out of 10, you can repair these. So that would be in the contract. But we would require under this that if a can at some point, let's call it the second can or beyond, just totally, 15 years old, I mean, they do have to be replaced at some point. It's got its life out of it. The resident would pay for that can, but everything up until that would be repaired. And that's currently how we've been practicing that. If the vendor wants to cover that, that's fine, but those cans will, over time, at some point, start breaking down. But.
Right. And there was some talk about a level playing field and all of that. And if anybody really in any business is going to go after a new contract or try to get new business, there's a cost involved in that. And when you're dealing with this, if I'm bidding this trash contract, I know I'm going to have to buy some cans. Because obviously, if I don't buy the can, I can't pick up the trash. So I think it's as level as it can be. I mean, the current provider gets it again. We don't want to make him spend money to buy a new can just because the other guy had to buy a new can. But it has been 18 years, the cans that are out there need to be in working order. I mean, we need to and as long as, if I understand you correctly, we're going to do that. We're going to get a house count, and we're going to make sure the cans are in working order, and if they're not, you're going to document it and make sure that that gets done.
Correct.
So, to me, that's as level as it can be. My last question, is there anything in the contract that addresses complaints, or if someone has a problem, their trash didn't get picked up or what have you, they look in the phone book, they look up the name of the provider, they call a phone number. From what I think right now, I think it's a local phone number, but it rings somewhere else. And whenever all this started, there were local people here that knew the area, that answered those phone calls, and it was addressed. I'm not saying they're all not being addressed now, but when you're talking to somebody in another state, and I hope they can speak English, you know, some of these answering call centers and what have you, and that may not be the case here, but when you're talking to somebody out of state that doesn't know the area, I think there's a less likely chance that it's going to be taken care of. So is there anything in there that states that there needs to be a local person? And I'm not talking about, I know we all have a local person to call. That's not what I'm talking about. And they do a good job. If you call them and you got a problem, they take care of it. And we appreciate that. I'm talking about the citizen looking in the phone book and calling themselves.
No, sir, we don't require that because we felt that was one of those borderline ones. It's obviously something that if everybody could have a local number, and it is local, as you said, but if it goes somewhere else, we've worked out those issues in what is administration of any contract. There are going to be some issues over time where the service maybe gets more complaints, and our position is you work those out in the process of administering the contract, but to require them to have somebody here that is actually answering the phone at that number, we did not put that in.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Inchbont.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be very brief. Ellis is not here tonight, but he made a few remarks the other night about different colored cans and that sort of thing being purchased, maybe Sam's or Lowe's or whatever. I don't understand if you want 2 cans or 3 cans, why you can't just purchase them from the provider. I can't believe that they're not competitive. And the reason I say that is that in my neighborhood, there are several residents and neighbors that have 2 or 3 cans, and they're all blue, every one of them. So that tells me that they called a provider who services sulfur and needed additional cans and got them from them. So the color of the can to me is irrelevant. I don't care if it's pink, black, blue, or green. If it's out there, it's going to have to be picked up. All I'm saying is that I can't believe that the providers are not competitive with a price if you need additional cans, and that's my point. Check with them first before you just go out and buy a can. I think that probably the provider would be even cheaper because they buy a whole lot more of them than Lowe's or Sam's or whoever else he was talking about the other night. I wished he was here to qualify more of what he was saying, but anyway, that's my point. I check with the provider first, and I can tell you truthfully, I guarantee you, probably over 50% of the cans that were originally put out there are not even out there anymore, because I see the truck with green cans all over the place. How you back?
Thank you, Mr. Inchbont. Mr. Size.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought on the when we talked about the meeting, that the basic service meant that I thought they said the first can was free.
Well, yeah, as we presented it last week, it was, I hate to use the word free, but I think you mean included with the price.
You didn't pay.
Correct,
you didn't
and
pay
that
for
was.
Okay.
The feedback from what we're responding to, some of the feedback from jurors is that, well, somebody may not have to go get new cans if you currently provide it, but a new provider would. You ought to mandate new ones. We simply, to try to address that, we do not believe you need to mandate new cans, but we just separated out that. The parish sales tax would still pay it.
Right.
It's just separated as an item on the form.
Right. But I guess I'm trying to say that if the basic service, if you don't have to pay for the first can of the basic service, then why do we have step 2? where we have to show a price for a can. Why doesn't the basic service shows what a basic service is with one can? Bottom line.
We're trying to make this as apples to apples for
Well, if you-
anybody.
That's apples to apples, you know, the basic.
Well,
service
that-
can would be what, you know, because that's what it's going to be, you know, because you really don't really need to know how much they pay for that first can, because you know, basically the first can, it doesn't cost, you know, so that's what I'm trying to understand.
I don't disagree, Mr. Sias. I believe it's sort of, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but we're trying to get it to where it doesn't negatively affect us to separate it, and it's one less item we hope is not confusing when all of these bids come in, because we want to try to make this as streamlined as possible, but it's really just a matter of choice of how you want to do it. We could do it either way, but we think this solves.
All you just doing is just saying how much one can costs, you know, but actually the first can is going to be a part of the basic service. I can see what a
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Milner take a shot at that one.
Well, I was just saying we broke it down as to some of the cans, some present provider may not have any cost for the first can, and it may be up the option to the bidder to put a unit price. So there could be a cost, or it couldn't be a cost. I mean, it's not going to be the citizen that pays for it. It's going to be the tax that pays for it. So we just wanted to break down the two different costs, so you'd have in their quote or in the response of the proposal, they'd have it service, the price of the service, and then the price of they were going to charge the parish for the cans, the first can that we'd have to pay for, the parish would have to pay for. So it was a way, because some, you know, it was a way to try to break down the proposal. It wouldn't make it less confusing. To me, it would make it, you know, more defined.
All right, so you all understand.
Just to clarify, I'm probably being repetitive, but the way this is presented, that basic service per household is with no can. You couldn't do it without doing 1 and 2. So we have to get a bid on both, or a quote. But it's just separated on the form is all.
That's good, Mr. Sias? You done? Okay. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions, Mr. Beam. On the franchise agreements in Ward 1, are they going to be renewed concurrently with the new contract for the parish-wide service?
That is our plan. Back when you agreed to extend the Ward 2 through 8 contract for a year, we did the same with the other provider, which is Jim Bill Disposal. Waste Management, of course, is up there as well. So we extended both of those 1 year also, and our plan would be, once you determine the provider for Wards 2 through 8 this year, we would also have to make sure we extend in Ward 1 whoever continues to want a franchise there. And that really wouldn't change. And we would more than likely recommend it also be for a 5-year period, just to keep it on the same track.
So we're parallel, not
Correct.
diverging.
That's correct.
Okay. Next question, Mr. Beam. I know in the past we've had a few problems. I don't know about the rest of the parish, but in Ward 1, we've had a few problems with spillage on the roads, causing odors, stains, non-aesthetically pleasing issues. How are those going to be addressed in the new contract?
Well, each violation is a little different. For example, what we've done is we'll have liquidated damages in there for what would be considered maybe a daily type violation, a missed route, for example. Spillage is one. Honestly, the best thing is if we can if it becomes a problem, we say you're spilling too much, and not to do it anymore and go clean up what you did. And that's really, in that case, that's probably how we'd handle it. But if it got to be to where it's not getting done and it's getting worse, the liquidated damages kick in, and it's a financial penalty.
Okay. And last question, Do we have any requirements as far as response time and providing service immediately after a hurricane event?
The way we work that, for any, we call that a special service in the contract, and it is separately negotiated, and so it doesn't, it allows us to enter one with any provider, but it sets the terms separately from the day-to-day. So depending on how that's structured, we could put what we need. As a matter of fact, it's mainly hurricanes is the issue. It could be something else, but prior to each hurricane season, we've been getting rates ahead of time from the provider, Waste Management. So if it happens, we're not going out then and discussing, well, how are we going to do this and what's going to cost. So we do that separately already. And we would continue that under this new contract.
So under the new contract, if we have a hurricane, we will not have a situation to where there is a week or more to where we have trash accumulating on the side of the road because the ability to pick it up is not there.
Well, I'd like to answer that by saying it depends on the hurricane. I don't mean to be flippant. Hurricane Rita and Hurricane Ike, the timing really makes all the difference. Depending on whose route was there in the parish, somebody was getting picked up the next day who probably had delays. Other people never even noticed the difference by the time, especially with Ike, we had a quicker recovery. They didn't even lose any time. So you have to be kind of flexible with that. If we can do that to where it doesn't hem us in, there are some legitimate things what companies just can't get to it that quickly, but they're still going to pick that up. But I would say we address that separately, and we can discuss the details of that prior to June 1st, certainly.
I think I'm okay with flexibility. I don't know if I'm okay with a full split. So
Well, it could be completely different. And I know you experienced some of that last time, and I think, it was a timing of the week issue, and y'all ended up a little bit longer than some of the other parts of the parish. But it was different in Rita. It could be different next time. It all got picked up, is the point.
I would like to watch that close, but that addresses my question. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Mr. Farnham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go back to what Mr. Landry talked about a little bit ago, is the quality of the cans that exist. Because right now, you drive around and there's a whole lot of cans out there that don't have lids on them that add to our litter problem. Because people pack their cans full, there's no lid on them, the wind blows and blows the garbage off into the ditch. So I think that we got to have some kind of quality assurance on the existing cans throughout the course of the contract to make sure that they're kept in good working order. And I guess a time frame on the second can. You had mentioned that over time these things are going to go bad, but they can go bad in 3 weeks if they're not handled properly, and it's the carrier, the service provider, that's tearing the cans up because time's money for them. So the faster they can get that can dumped, and sometimes the lid ends up in the truck along with all the garbage, and then we end up with a broken can. So do we have any kind of a definition on what a natural course would be for a second can before the resident would have to pay for that again?
We didn't set a time period, but we are going to require that the provider be very lenient on that. For example, if somebody bought a can, 6 months ago, and then in picking up the can, they accidentally put a big crack in it, we'd want the resident to say, hey, I just bought this, and it may not even be an issue. Hopefully they just replace it and realize they made a mistake. And we're going to have some of those. So it's not going to be, there's no way we're paying for it kind of deal.
And I guess it's something that we could evaluate when the contract comes up on how many complaints we're having.
Oh, really? And we will do that.
So on a 5-year time
regularly.
Frame, it probably wouldn't be an issue. The other part is up in Ward 1, I'm not real sure why we're going to have to make residents buy a can. I don't understand that. It's a pretty flat deal. They're paying for 1 month's worth of service, and you can't have service without a can. So I don't know why you'd want to have to make a resident pay for a can.
Well, you wouldn't have to if there's no other providers. So it depends, I guess.
You're going to subscribe to a service, and it's like Cablevision. And
That's the problem, though, is we,
get a service.
it's simple, it's simply that Ward 1, the tax does not apply in Ward 1, so there's no provision to really do that. They're not required to use any, like, for example, as you know, the residents up there have a choice right now with 2.
Right, and
They don't have to, but here's the other side that this is very important, I think, for Ward 1. The way this is set up, it doesn't require residents to use the provider in Wards 2 through 8. But it also insurance that if there are no second providers in Ward 1, that you'll have at least one. And that's pretty important. I think it's a very good service. If you approve this as a jury, that's a really good commitment. So all we're saying is if somebody else comes in and Waste Management, they may stay 2. You could have 3 up there. But if they were to leave, they're taking the can.
Maybe I'm just missing the boat here, but
they're taking their can with them because that's part of the service.
absolutely. And if somebody else comes along, are they going to be required to pay for another can?
It depends on the provider. They may give it to you as part of that.
Is it right? It's looking here. It's pretty much black and white. That they're going to have to pay for a can, and they have the option of spreading it out over 12 months.
We're not requiring that they charge for the can. We're just saying the tax doesn't pay for the can.
Mr. Farnham,
And none of these are taxes in Ward 1.
Mr. Spell would like to address you
Okay.
on that issue.
I was just going to add, if my colleagues would like to support Mr. Farnham's concern, the people of Ward 1 would be happy to accept the free can. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, I know, but what I'm getting at is that it's not tax money. They're subscribing to a service, and it's like subscribing for Cablevision. And if you subscribe to that, you don't have to pay extra to have the wire run up to your house.
But
It's a service. And it's
But the
cost of
difference
doing
is
it.
that service in Ward 1, this kind of goes to Mr. Sias's question. That's a subscription that includes the can. So that is in that current bill, if you will. If that goes, the can goes with it. So it's part and parcel. And
So I guess I would assume that the average bill up there is, I don't know, $18 a month or whatever it
depends on
is.
the provider.
That number should go down if this can gets added into it on the bottom end.
And honestly, in the big scheme of things, it's a pretty, it's very small cost. If that even happens, it could very well be thrown in. They may not charge. Plus, all we're saying is if you do have to get a can, we're actually going that extra step to say you must allow, if you're used, to let the customer pay for that over the course of a full year, which really disappears in a trash bill. So I think it's fair, but I also think it's really kind of immaterial if it even comes.
Thank you, Brian.
I still got
Ms.
a
Griffin, do you want to address Mr. Farnham?
Mr. President, I would like for my colleague from Moss Bluff, Mr. Spell, to explain to this jury what he just explained to me in reference to my question with Ward 1. Because I'm concerned about Ward 1 receiving services and not paying for it and getting something free, and the other taxpayers are not. That is my biggest concern, and I think we're very liberal with his needs and his requests because we do represent the whole parish, but I'm totally against them. So if you would be kind enough to explain to this jury what you just told me, and I remember every word. Thank you.
With your permission, Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Spell.
Yes, Ms. Griffin, I guess my humor was ill-timed. The whole sales tax issue comes to light, which I believe Mr. Beam was trying to explain, but the Ward 1 is not included in the sales tax district that provides a service for Wards 2 through 8. So the way the service in Ward 1 works is each customer pays a bill directly to the service provider, and as part of that service, the can is included, but it's included with the bill that they pay directly to the company. to say that they get a free can, they don't get a free can. They're getting it as part of the bill that they're paying. But that money, none of the money from the sales tax proceeds is being used to subsidize that service because Ward 1 is an independent sales tax district.
Correct.
For reasons that we have discussed in the past. So when people get trash service and a trash can in Ward 1, it's because they are paying that bill directly to the service provider. And it is my understanding that there is no subsidy from the sales tax revenue in the sales tax district that covers Wards 2 through 8.
That's correct. None of this will go toward Ward 1. It's just pricing access. And I'm trying to address Mr. Farham's. We were sort of forced to do it separate. I say forced. That's to try to get the other parts of this through. It affected Ward 1. So it's separate. If you'll see on the, I don't have the slide anymore. Because we went to basic service with no cans in Wards 2 through 8, when they turn it in, we didn't want to make it so confusing. We just said because of that, there's this can issue hanging out there in Ward 1. We wouldn't have had to do this if we'd have kept it the same way elsewhere. So that's really where that came from.
Mr. Beam, let me call on Jerry.
I was just trying to answer Mr. Farham's question. The reason we wanted to get, we broke down the bid in Ward 2 through 8 between the user fee and the cans, and we wanted to give the benefit of Ward 1 the user fee. I mean, the basic rate. We wanted to get them a competitive basic rate because they could jump on the rate that we're going to get between Ward 2 and 8. But there was the present vendor, if they lose, they're going to pick up the can, so there's going to have to be a can purchase to replace that one. And since Ward 1 pays for their own cans, we were trying to, give them the basic rate and then figure out a way that they could pay that over maybe a 12-month period so it wouldn't be so difficult for one time.
I understand that explanation. You're trying to leverage the basic service cost.
And that's, so to do that, we had to break it down basic rate so they'll get the basic rate.
I understand that. I yield the floor.
Okay, Ms. Griffin, you still have a comment?
I do, sir. Thank you. I appreciate, I appreciate my colleague, Mr. Spell, for making it known. We already know it, but a lot of times our taxpayers don't know it. But it would be good for us to remember that Ward 1 is an independent sales tax district. And so I appreciate your frankness with that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Go ahead, Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr.
You
President.
said you had 2 words.
No, I said he missed 2 words.
Oh.
The 2 words that he missed was by choice. They're independent by choice. They made that decision, and unfortunately, I mean, personally, I think it was a wrong decision 20 years ago, and that's why all their roads aren't paved, and that's why they don't have free garbage, because they chose the school board tax. There was even an option out there to split that, where they could have got the the best of both worlds. That didn't happen, and unfortunately, here we are 20 years later with this problem and with no end in sight. It's going to continue until those voters up there decide that they're going to do something different, which the tax is at the maximum, I believe. Is it not? I mean, it's not. So, there's some things that possibly could be done, but I don't think that it's going to pass. They've never passed it before. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So, I mean, it's just by choice. I mean, they got what they asked for, and I'm sure most people there are happy with that. I would think. I mean, there's nice schools in Moss Bluff. There's no doubt.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Mr. Spell.
Not to digress, but I would agree at some length with Mr. Landry. However, my personal opinion is they should be given the choice again. 20 or 30 years ago, that's a long time. Yeah. And unfortunately, nothing associated with this panel or body, but I believe not to be given that choice on a more frequent basis is unjust. But that is another discussion for another time and not on the agenda item. So with that, I yield, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. McMillan, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Beam, thank you for what you've done on kind of leveling this playing field, and then also not making the current contractor who's out there and has all these cans have to come in, so we can see a service cost, and we can see a can cost, and that's what I'd ask for with this. In discussion with cans 18 years old, I don't think currently we have anything out there. I think probably the longevity of a can, maybe 5 years or less. I'm not sure. We maybe get that information, but I can tell you District 14, when people need a trash can repaired, or if there's a trash can that needs to be repaired, call me if they can't get in touch with the provider. I've got a direct line to our provider that I can get a trash can repaired in a heartbeat, and it just in and out quickly. So call your police bureau, 488-4848. I'll be more than happy to make sure that we get a trash can out there if yours is in disrepair in District 14. Now, that same quality of service that I have, I want to make sure that the next provider provides that. If it's the same provider, that's tremendous. If it's somebody else gets this, I want to be one phone call away from making sure that if a can is in disrepair, we can get it fixed. Now, a lot of people think, well, it's right now a waste management can, let's call waste management, and that's what they should do. And I think they should have a good hot number that they can get a repair on that. But if they don't, they're able to call me in my district, and I'll get them a trash can repair person out there to take care of that. So with that being said, I don't want to lose that level of service, and I appreciate what you've done on separating out the service costs versus the can. So when we look at it, we can see across the board, apple-to-apple type bid. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Guidry, go ahead.
Go ahead, I'll yield the floor to Mr.
This will be very brief. I believe Waste Management's been great at these, and anytime we've had issues, we certainly meet with them, and jurors get involved. But there are a lot of people who, they don't call it in complaining, and I've seen some on my street where I don't know that the company's been called. So sometimes the people they just don't worry about it. So I just want to make sure that there's not an assumption that every can that doesn't look good has been called in and nothing's been done. Some people really are okay with it. I'm not personally, but I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. President.
Guidry.
I guess, Brian, I just wanted to be clear on, because I wasn't really understanding a little bit of what Mr. Size was saying about how we was going to break it down. I know basically every provider is just going to be given the opportunity to give just a service contract based on what that's going to be, and then it's going to go down based on the amount of cans that that individual would want or need for that household. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, no, I think the part I haven't really communicated well is you have to have a can, obviously.
Right.
It's just
right.
a matter of one and two have to go together.
Mm-hmm.
We're just breaking it out. So the evaluation takes all of that in, the service and then cost of the first can. That's really the issue.
Right.
The second and third cans, and a lot of people don't even have second cans.
Right.
But for the ones that do, it's really just give us your price on that.
Right, because not everybody's got that many
So
cans. I understand that.
that's really not driving it.
Right.
It's really just, it's the service, but it's just broken down into two items. But you have to have both. You can't, if we just got prices on item one, basic service, there's no can involved.
Right.
But
right.
it's not the driver.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Green.
All right, Mr. Guidry. Is there any other discussion? Any objection?
I have one more to say.
Yeah, have a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Sines.
I too, like Mr. McMillan, the people in Ward 8, anytime they call me, I've been able to help them out. And so anytime they need to call me, 274-2144.
Wow.
That's
Paid political announcement.
Is it an election year?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Sines. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that item will carry. Oh, I'm sorry. Need to go back to 11. I forgot Mr. Charlie Atherton. Charlie still here? Charlie, I apologize.
I'll just take the rollover minutes.
The rollover minutes, you got it.
There was none left.
Those will add up quickly. I apologize for that, Charlie.
You don't need to give Charlie a rollover.
I'll blame it on my vice president. Okay, I think we're going to go to item 12. Okay, consideration of approving the Public
Move all
Works
bullets.
Committee report
Second.
dated March 31st, 2011. I have a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Oh, wait a minute, I need to read the bullets, I'm sorry. Is that with all bullets, Mr. Anderpont?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 12-1, presented a trophy of certificates to Stark High School schoolgirls basketball team. 12-2, receive report from staff with reference to the I-10 bridge lighting project. 12-3, recommended that the following resolution and ordinance be adopted regarding a non-parish maintained public road known as unnamed road off Cooley Road. 12-1-3.1 is resolution authorizing the President of the Ministry to execute the necessary documents for donation of right-of-way from various property owners. 12-3.2, resolution accepting the road for future parish maintenance and naming it Wilkins Road. 12-4, consideration of making a recommendation with the reference to adopting the following resolution and ordinance regarding a non-parish maintained public road known as the East Sandy Lane, number 1. 12-4.1 is resolution authorizing the President of the Police Jury to execute the necessary documents for donation of right-of-way from various property owners. 12.4.2 is resolution accepting the road for future parish maintenance and naming it Gerald Lynn Lane. Bullet 12.5, recommend that Calcasieu Parish Police Jury number 2010-09 overlaying of various roads in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana be accepted as substantially complete. 12.6, recommend that the resolution be adopted authorizing the Director of Animal Services and Adoption Center to be alter the adoption fees for cats and dogs on April 30th, 2011. 12.7 is an advise that the animal rabies clinics will be held Saturday, April 2nd and Saturday, April 16th. Go ahead, Mr. Anderpont.
Thank you, Mr. President. Going back to 12-2, if I could address Mr. Connors, please, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, go ahead.
Tim, foremost, want to thank you for the report last week. I would respectfully ask that we keep a strong line of communication, not only with the City of Lake Charles, but with the electrical company. The reason being that I feel like if we get laxed here, they may get laxed over there. We just need to keep the line taut and keep their feet to the fire. We're getting a lot of positive response from the public out there, knowing full well that this body is trying to get the light back on the bridge. So if you could do that.
I made myself a note during the meeting to contact them next week to get updates. So I appreciate
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
Tim.
Anderpont. Thank you, Tim. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 13, consideration of approving the Agenda Committee report dated March 31st, 2011. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 14, consideration of adopting a resolution indicating
14.
objection, no objection to the following proposed project. 14.1, proposal of William John Navarra. Said project is located at 535 Shell Beach Drive in Lake Charles. The planning staff recommends that the police jury indicate no objection to the project application. And I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Guidry. And any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 15, consideration of authorizing the Director of Planning and Development to notify the following property owners to show cause at a public hearing on May 19, 2011, or the first regular police jury meeting thereafter as to why the structures on the properties as stipulated should not be condemned. 15.1, 7152 Monk Street, that's in the Bell City area. 15.2, 4314 Queen Street, that's in Mossville area. 15.3 is 2763 Ryan Road, that's South Lake Charles area. 15.4 is 3542 Harmon, Broussard Road, North Sulphur area. 15.5 is 6427 Barton Drive, La Blue Settlement. 15.6 is 3748 East Burton Street, Mossville area. 15.7 is 566 Edson Street, Sulphur area. 15A is 3129 East Burton Street, North Sulphur area. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 16, consideration of approving the recommendations of the Director of the Division of Planning and Development to accept the highest offer in reference to the adjudicated property sale conducted March 29, 2011. I have actually 32 bullets on this. I'm not going to read them, but if anybody that's watching the meeting on CGov, they can go to our website and read those bullets, and it has the description of the land. With that said, is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. I'll go back to 16 and just state the website is cppj.net. Go ahead, Mr. Landry.
What if they don't have a computer? Can they call them? We'll mail them a copy? How about
Yeah,
that?
they can call or we'll mail them a copy.
Okay. I was just wanting to cover everybody.
Thank you for reminding me for that.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Mr. McMillan said call 488-48, and he'll take care of it.
All right.
He's wonderful tonight.
Okay. We'll go to item 17. Consideration of adopting a resolution approving the renewal of a lease agreement between the police jury and the Southwest Louisiana Bar Foundation for office spaces on a certain portion of the fourth floor of the Magnolia Building. I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Mr. Size. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 18, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a proposal for engineering services between the police jury and Meyer and Associates, Inc., for the intersection improvements at Old Spanish Trail, Coach Williams Drive, and Raynaud Road. Have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Mr.
That was me.
I'm sorry, a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Fornum. Ms. Griffin?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I need a question answered on number 18. The resolution approving a proposal. What proposal? Is there a cost to the proposal?
I'll let Mr. Connor answer that.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yes, there are fees associated with that, and it's usually based on the cost of the project, percentage of that. Yes,
So
ma'am.
do you have when to go with this? Or do you have?
Yes, yes, we do have a proposal, yes.
Well, how much is it, sir?
It depends on the cost of the project, but those fees usually run somewhere between 7, 8, 9% of the project cost.
Okay, thank you.
Let me mention something.
Go ahead, Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. And while we're discussing this real quickly, I think it's a very positive thing going to be happening in the Coach Williams Drive area and Old Spanish Trail. Currently, it's offset in there. We're looking at, and Tim, correct me, but we're looking at straightening that out. And once we get it straightened, that intersection straightened out through there, then we can have a possibility of putting up a signal, a light there. And a lot of people have been concerned, that's in my district, about wanting a signal light in there. So make some comments on that, what we're looking at doing on that piece of property.
Yeah, we've had a traffic engineering study done, and we know about what we need as far as turn lanes, and we know that we'll have to do some realigning of the intersection, and that will all be done as part of that project. And to go back to Ms. Griffin on the fees, right now we're estimating that project could be $750,000, $800,000, but and so it'd be a percentage of that cost. So that's just something that as we get into the project, we'll know, but we know about what the percentage will be.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Connors.
ahead.
May I, Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Griffin.
I think this is really needed. That's a dangerous curve. I'm aware of that. It piqued my curiosity when you said to approve a proposal and there was no cost. Would make me feel more comfortable if I would know what kind of money we're talking about.
Okay.
But thank you so much. Perhaps you'll have a cost when you bring another one up.
Okay.
Nevertheless, I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Is there, we had a motion second? Okay. Any discussion, any more discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that item will carry, which was 18. We did 19 already. We'll go to 20. Consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a continuation grant application certification in an amount of $200,000 to the Louisiana Supreme Court, which outlines the certification and budgets of the Calcasieu Parish Juvenile Drug Court Treatment Program. Have a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 21, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a request to the Louisiana Workforce Commission for the purpose of transferring up to $138,108 of WIA Title IB dislocated worker funds allocation for PY10-FY11 to the WIA Title IB adult program. That's pretty good. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 22, take appropriate action on the bids received by the parish purchasing agent on March 30th, 2011 for the following: 22.1 bulk oil propane fuel. Item 22.2 is 2011 3/4 ton extended cab and chassis trucks. I have a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 23, take appropriate action on the bids received by the parish purchasing agent for Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2011-03. Agenda note, the parish engineer recommends that the low bid in the amount of $3,828,657.25 of Ori Height Construction Company, Inc. be accepted. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 24, take appropriate action on bids received by the parish purchasing agent for the construction of a new metal building and repair on other buildings at CPPJ Mosquito Control. Agenda note, the project architect recommends that the low bid in the amount of $154,650 of John D. Myers and Associates be accepted. I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 25, take appropriate action to fill a vacancy created by the resignation of Mr. Charles Broussard as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Community Center and Playground District Number 3 of Ward 7. The Agenda Committee recommends that Mr. Terry Cormier be appointed. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 26, take appropriate action to fill a vacancy created by the
Mr. Bernard Habit.
resignation of Mr. Rodney Fry as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Waterworks District Number 8 of Ward 3 and 8. The Agenda Committee recommended that Mr. Bernard Habits be appointed. I have a motion by Mr. Stelly and a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 27, take appropriate action to fill a vacancy created by the resignation of Mr. Stanley Lewis as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Waterworks District Number 5 of Ward 3 and 8. The Agenda Committee recommended that Mr. Kenneth George be appointed. I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 28, consideration of adopting a resolution of condolences to the family of Mr. Trent Guidry. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I would like to just pass on our condolences from the jury. We've lost a great 4-H agent here in this parish. He's, as a family man and as a 4-H agent, he was top of the line. I didn't know him personally, but all 3 of my kids knew him, and so our parish has lost a great mentor to our children. So I would just like to pass on condolences to his family. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Okay, with no other discussion, hearing no objection, that motion will carry. Item 29, consideration of proclaiming the week of April 25th through the 30th as Community Development in Calcasieu Parish. I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Mr. Spell. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Anderpont.
We have a member here tonight who is celebrating a wedding anniversary
Would you stand, Beth, and let everybody?
Thank you, Ms. Donderpont.
Her
Well,
and
might
Henry are celebrating their 28th wedding anniversary tonight.
Might
So,
I?
Congratulations.
Might I add, Mr. President, nobody asked her better half to stand. Would Coach mind standing?
All right, I have Mr. Bean would like a personal point of privilege. Go ahead, Mr. Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a moment to commend the local legislative delegation and all of you, Gerard, and many others. As you know, the state legislature is currently going through a lot of redistricting. They're still going through it. The congressional redistricting is the big challenge, and it's ongoing. But earlier this week, the local delegation did a tremendous job pushing hard to protect the interest of Calcasieu Parish, and it's just worthy of mention. And a lot of that was backed and supported by all of you who were very active, as well as many others in the community. It's a tough process. We obviously know this firsthand. There's got to be give and take, but I don't know if the average citizen here knows how close we came earlier in the week to having a plan passed that was very unfavorable to this parish. We don't know how it's going to end up, but regardless, it was a lot of work done to prevent that. Commend all of you, commend the local delegation and others who took place, and I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. We know that y'all worked hard on it too, trying to get that done. Can I have a motion?
Move. Second.
We are adjourned.
All right.